panel is actually going to explore how do we move from obligation-based giving, paying black tax, being part of a chama, let's say, for social reasons, into impact-driven giving, right? When we're in a group pooling money together, how do we decide where that money goes, and how can we pool that money together for impact? Taking us into this discussion, I'd love to welcome our moderator, Charity Mwathi, and our guest, Jermaine Craig, CEO of Kwanda. Round of applause as they come up onto stage.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, you remember the game that Michelle played, the one for the robbers, the neighbors, and the cops? Okay, I'll just say it in one sentence. Cops, neighbors, robbers. Okay, we're there. So, yeah, thank you all so much for joining us today at the summit, and especially for this discussion. We are about to go into a conversation on redefining giving, the power of diaspora-led philanthropy. So this conversation is essentially about charity, and that's my name as well, so no pun intended. Yeah, but I wanted to start off with some statistics. So Africa remains the largest recipient of net bilateral official development assistance from OECD, receiving around $39.7 billion in 2022. However, Africa's share of global official development assistance has declined over the past decade. And I'm sure you've all heard about the budget cuts, USAID, other European countries are also, retracting some of the budget that they were, sending across to Africa. So it reduced from around 37.6 in 2013 to about 26.7 in 2023. And across the world, Africans in the diaspora are sending home over $100 billion every year, more than foreign aid, and often more impactful. So we're now at a moment where we're asking ourselves, how can we make this giving more sustainable, more intentional, and more empowering? So without further ado, I would like to have our panelist introduce himself and talk a bit more about what he does.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Jermaine Craig. I am the founder of Kwanda, which is a community of diasporans all around the globe. There are almost 1,900 of us so far who put together small amounts of money, anywhere between $5 to $20 a month, and then we decide collectively how we want to invest that money in social impact and social projects across the continent.
All right, thank you for that. So what's one misconception that people have about modern philanthropy, and especially Western philanthropy, that you would want to discuss?
So I think, first of all, it's important to frame philanthropy again. Philanthropy gets a bad name because when we mention the word philanthropy, we think massive NGOs soaking up capital, we think charity, we think aid, and then effectively we say, oh, no. We've seen that for decades and decades. It doesn't work. I don't want any more of that. And what we actually need to remember is philanthropy is broader than giving food on a short term to a community. So there are many things that we benefit from in our day-to-day lives that are only available to us because of philanthropy. I can start with one of arguably the most transformational technologies in the world today, OpenAI, ChatGPT. That's only possible because of donations that seeded that innovation. Things like Wikipedia, which we use to get a lot of our information today, is only possible because of continuous donations. Linux, open source, crypto, all of these things rely on people having a philanthropic nature and not initially seeking capital only. So I think it's important to reframe philanthropy, remind everyone of how broad it can be. And then common misconceptions about modern philanthropy are that it's not sustainable, it doesn't lead to anything truly innovative, or it doesn't lead to job creation. But in all of those examples that I mentioned, they actually power hundreds of thousands of businesses and commerce that actually then go on to provide jobs to people. So it's kind of like the hidden secret behind a lot of the innovations we enjoy today.
All right, so how would you describe Kwanda's business model? How does it work for you? How do you vet partners? How do you choose initiatives to support with the philanthropic aid you receive?
Okay, so to describe more what we're doing at Kwanda, we're effectively saying, hey, are you a member of the diaspora or are you living on the continent? Do you want to do some philanthropic work in your time on this earth? And if you're anything like me, the answer is yes, I want to do philanthropic work, but when I launch my startup, sell it, make my billions, and then I'll give back. But as we see with, I think it's Chama in Kenya. I'm Nigerian.
Achama, right?
Yeah.
How many of you are in Achama? Okay, I'm seeing more ladies put their hands up. Yes, please go
Yeah,
on.
I mean, 80% of the people that are in Kwanda are women, so the men need to step up. But effectively, what we've been forced to do throughout history, because we don't have access to such large amounts of individual wealth, is come together collectively to basically produce results for ourselves, for our communities, etc. And so what Kwanda is saying is, why can't we do the same with philanthropy? If we individually want to build schools and hospitals, you can look to your left and right and you're gonna find someone who wants to do the same thing. So rather than wait till you make your millions, all you need is $5, $10, $20 combined with 10,000 other people. And now you can create schools, you create hospitals, you can fund science, and you can do it in a way that resonates with you, is locally led, and respects the dignity of the people that will benefit from it, but also see those innovations. What was the question after that?
How do you vet the partners, the initiatives that you'll be working with?
Okay, so we're quite opinionated in the type of work we fund. So there are a few things that are very important to us. One is locally led, so that all the projects we fund are contextually relevant, locally led, and are seeded and driven by people who are closest to the problem. And then another thing is innovation. We want to do away with the dependency-based aid, charity, capital, and say, actually, can we fund things that are a click beyond what's typical? And so an example I can give you is a project we fund in Kenya right now, and it's in a place called Wambunyu, so it's quite rural. And effectively, the challenge we're solving there is period poverty, and period poverty keeping girls primarily out of school. And the typical approach would be, oh my God, I'm noticing girls are losing X amount of days in a year because they don't have access to sustainable period products. And so I live in London, I live in Atlanta, whatever it might be. And then I say, oh, I'm gonna buy a bunch of pads from this company in Atlanta, I'm gonna ship it over, and then I've solved that problem. But the challenge with that is you create this dependency. Again, your capital is going to a foreign company, and the girls become dependent on this stuff, and there's no way for them to access it timely when they need it. And so this community in Kenya, what they did is a group of local mums came together. They learned how to sew reusable period kits that can be used for up to 2 years. And then they basically created a small economy. They create these kits and then they give them to the girls. And we found that and said, okay, this is something that's local, it's contextually relevant. The supply chain or the supply line is close by. And we funded that. We had, the way our platform works is we find something like that, I'd write a proposal to our members, we'd vote on it, and then we say, yes, we'd love to invest £10,000 in this particular thing. And that project now has delivered these pads to over 1,000 girls. And we calculate it's kept them in school for an additional 30,000 days. And so when you think about education and people provide a solution coming from outside, the answer typically is, okay, we need to create this AI education app because this will get girls in school, blah, blah, blah. But when you're local, you realize that actually the reason this particular girl didn't go to school was because she didn't have reliable access to these products, and therefore she lost an extra 25 days in a year. And that's the type of thing that you can't really suss out unless you're on the ground.
Yeah, and it's very unfortunate, that this is still happening, especially in this year. But I want to ask you, if I am, for example, in London, how will I know that it's actually getting to the girls in need? How do you ensure that there's trust and transparency when it comes to that?
Yeah, so we have an interesting model and platform. What we actually do is, and I think we might be the only people who do this, but we have what we call our ledger. And this means every single transaction that comes in and out of the organization is available for public view. You can go on the website right now, you can see salaries, you can see how much we spend on cloud hosting, how much we spend on travel, parties, etc. And the reason we did this is really to adjust the trust deficit when it comes to diasporans investing their capital philanthropically. The question you always get is, I don't know where my money's gonna go, how it's gonna be spent. And so before we actually created this platform, it was important to solve that trust issue and say, we're gonna be completely transparent. I'm the CEO, everyone in the community is in a WhatsApp. They can get in contact with me and say, hey, I noticed 50% of the capital we invest is going into salaries, why is that? And then I'm held accountable. So we're basically 100% transparent, and that's how we essentially earn the trust of the people that contribute to this giant pot we're building.
All right, thank you for that. Is it possible to be a bit more personal with the person that you want to help? Do you have that kind of model? So if maybe I have bonded with a certain girl and I want to actually assist her all through secondary school, or it just goes to that project as a whole?
Yeah, so we actually directly deal with entrepreneurs. So what we're looking for is an entrepreneur that's grown up in the community and has said, here is a problem I've seen, here's the solution I want to provide. And so we don't actually directly deal with beneficiaries. We're kind of like a philanthropic angel fund, if you will. We're dealing with the entrepreneurs and we basically follow their lead. And if they want to send us information around like success stories, around beneficiaries, etc., we'll receive those. But yeah, we don't actually connect directly with the beneficiaries.
Okay, that's good to know. So what has been your boldest experiment so far?
I mean, there's something that's in the works right now. Well, one, if I'm being honest, I'd say the boldest experiment has been this push to actually do this in the first place. The transparency, like being held accountable at that level. And of course it has to scale. It's like, okay, we have projects in 11 countries right now. What about when we have projects in 54 countries? And we need to be able to show the paper trail with all those projects. But I'd say one of the bolder things we're doing right now is we're going into African universities, very early students, and we're saying we're willing to fund very early prototypes for whatever you might be doing. And then that might be to create data, to create new scientific knowledge that typically we have to pull from the West. And so you'll find that a lot of funding is not going into like very early prototype science in African universities. And a lot of people in the diaspora are very interested in that sort of stuff. So we're going into universities and saying, hey, we're willing to take a risk on you. And the reason we're able to do that is our model is such that because everyone's bringing in such small amounts of money, they're willing to lose that $5 that month on a risk on a particular prototype, experiment, or innovation. And so that's something that we're doing right now that's pretty bold because it requires a lot of due diligence, and there's also a bit of safeguarding around research and all of these things.
Yeah, I would like to know what you've learned and what diaspora community has surprised you, especially when it comes to generosity and creativity.
So one thing that people always wonder, because I'm Nigerian, and I'd say 70% of the people in our community are Nigerian as well. And what people would imagine is most of our projects are based in Nigeria. And so one thing that's actually surprised me is the collective mindset across countries, simply because for, I'd say, half of the time we existed, the majority of our donors were Nigerians, but most of our work was done in East Africa, Tanzania, Kenya. So people have an appetite to help across borders if the platform they're doing that through is trustworthy and they can see a vision that spreads across communities across Africa, and we're also in the Caribbean now, etc. So that's something that's surprised me, that solidarity across borders.
Okay, but so how do you manage the demand across the different countries?
So the answer is we're managing it. It's very tough. Because of our level of transparency, we get a lot of goodwill from people. So I'm very honest about the fact that this is something that's never been done before. We're trying to work across all countries and represent the entire diaspora, but we're going to take it step by step, country by country. So we're now in about 15 different countries, and honestly, it's a thing we learn month by month, like how do we scale? Like we might get to year 2 and figure out that, okay, once you're in 30 countries, we suddenly aren't able to communicate the impact we're having at the same level. So we might need to change the model, we might need to invest more amounts of money in less projects. So yeah, it's a learning process. There's no existing playbook for what we're doing. So we're just taking it month by month, really.
All right, and which country did you first begin with? Was it Nigeria?
So we actually initially started with a focus, weirdly enough, in the UK. And so this was African communities in the UK. So we were doing anything from putting capital together and then paying for free therapy for women and men. And then when COVID hit, there was kind of like a sense that governments aren't necessarily doing as much as they could be doing for rural communities across Africa. So our members effectively said, hey, we need to turn off this stuff we're doing in the UK and go into rural communities across Africa that are being left behind. And what happened is we did that, and we just noticed that the impact far outsized anything we could do in the UK. There was almost a sense of entitlement in the UK. I remember we did this thing where we were paying for therapy for people, and I think it cost us about £5,000 to do 10 sessions, 10 people. And people just didn't turn up because it felt like, it's a good to have, but I don't necessarily need it. And then you take that same £5,000 and you're able to build or drill clean water wells that deliver, free clean water to thousands of people. And so at that point, we thought we're going to do the thing that's most expedient, and we're going to go where the impact is. And that's what moved us over to Africa as a continent. And our first country would have been Ghana. Yeah.
Okay, so speaking of entitlement, I have a very short story. So when I lived in the UK during the winter month, I remember I used to see a homeless guy right outside where I lived. And, it crossed my mind. I'm like, I have a jacket. I can help this guy with this jacket. And so I did that the next morning. I helped him with the jacket, and guess what he said to me? Anyone with a guess? No, he didn't say I need money. Not what took you so long. Any other guess? Can you buy me food? Okay, good guess, but no. He asked me, why are you giving me a pink jacket? I would have preferred a blue one. And that's when it hit me that I should keep this jacket and take it back to Kenya. So I get you totally. And if you could kindly share with us why you think foreign aid is declining, especially in Africa, and what strategies or structures you would like to bring about to sort of strengthen that moving forward.
Yeah, I think there's a sense that it's not working. There's a sense that it's not working. I'll wrap up. There's a sense that it's not working, and it doesn't resonate with communities on the ground and even Africans just across the globe. Like, when you meet someone, let's say I'm in Belgium, I meet someone and I say I'm from Nigeria. They might say to me, oh, it's tough out there, right? And, when you trace it back and think, oh, why do you have this view of me? And then you look back to NGOs, charity, philanthropy in the past. And so it's difficult as a Nigerian to then contribute to that, because it's kind of contributing to this narrative that I am someone that's left wanting, even though the place I'm coming from is a giving place. So I think, people are just fed up with that. And then you have Donald Trump, so.
Yeah, well, I feel like it's an opportunity to create more reliance on our own selves, and not rely from the aid that we're receiving from the Western countries.
Precisely.
So we have to wrap up this conversation. Unfortunately, any questions from the audience?
Just a follow-up on the scaling bit. I don't know what scaling looks like to you. Is it increasing the numbers, or is it getting a similar you and getting them to do what you do? Because I think one of the biggest challenges we've seen is getting similar people with the same mindset as you, because you can hold the group together and do a lot of work behind the scenes to get the investment done and getting, so I don't know what that looks to you and if there are strategies to actually do the scaling. I like the part that you're going to university to fund innovations or prototyping. I think we can have a conversation there much maybe later. Plus, what is mentioned about if you think of sort of matching funding and what is the cost of doing all this in your fund that could sort of be cushioned by any other matching fund if there's actually that window?
Yeah, so on the second question, and also I might be asking you to repeat it first because my memory's terrible. On the second question, yeah, we have a few ideas and strategies for the matching funds. The cost of what we do is listed on our website. Currently, it's about $10,000 a month. That is our infrastructure costs. And we're really just in a place where we're like, okay, let's get a couple rounds. Let's understand exactly what we do, get the machine running, be able to say to any, whether it's organization, whether it's company, that this is what we've been doing for 5, 10 years. This is how it works. It's a guarantee. And then at that point, we really want to switch on partnerships and see if we can bring other people into the fold. But what we want to do primarily is establish this community of people that understand that, hey, this is the thing we built. It's a tight-knit family, and then open it up beyond then. So we're really trying to think about when do we hit the limit on our early adopters, and when do we hit that scaling limit, and then beyond that, where do we go? And coming to scaling, so my vision is to open source our technology so people can start smaller versions. I've always believed in smaller modules coming together. I mean, so that's something we're going to do. We're going to open up local versions of what we do using our technology and open sourcing it, and then effectively saying, if someone's in a Christian community in Ghana and they want to do that thing, they can do it. And if someone's in Somalia and they want to do that thing, they can do it. And then beyond that, we hope to just be the largest version of that modular system. So there's an ambition to open source it, so there's smaller Kwandas effectively around, and then there's an ambition for us to be the largest source of that sort of funding.
All right, thank you so much, Jermaine, for your insights. And if you want to continue this conversation, you could do so after this discussion. I think we have the break right after. But yeah, let's take a photo and we'll be on to the next discussion. Thank you so much.